All right, friends, we're picking up where we left off, chapters 57 all the way to the end. We got a lot to cover, so I'm gonna attempt my best to speed through this, but we shall see. First, we start off with Rune meets with Day once again, and he's having a bad day. He's in a bad mood because of the whole thing where Ariadne the dragon, she ended up bailing, which is why like Bryce and Hypexia, when they got attacked and Ethan got attacked and like his throat ripped out, Dragon was nowhere to be found to help save them against the demons because she just peaced out. And so he's pissed that he didn't, foresee that, and overall just having a bad day. And then also the last time they had spoken, Day pretty much called him worthless and that he had never known sacrifice in his life and all this stuff. So when they meet again, she apologizes and she's basically like, hey, you're not worthless. Like, I also was having a bad day. And he's like, you're not very good at having friends, are you? And she's like, I've never actually had friends before. And he's like, well, first off, you don't take your anger out on them is rule number one. And then she's like, by the way, I'm gonna be coming to Lunathion for the autumnal equinox for the Archangel Ball. And he's like, I am gonna be there at that ball. And it's a masked ball, so great idea here. What if we meet? And she's like, that doesn't seem like such a great idea to me. And he's like, no, it's perfect because no one will really know who we are. We're masked. And also it won't be as weird. And we're gonna meet at midnight at this fountain, at this spot. Okay? And she's like, okay, cool. How are we gonna know though? If there's like other people around. And he's like, I'm gonna say day and you say night, and then boom, we'll know. So there's that. Bryce is now horrified to find out all of the list of restrictions and everything that she has to listen and follow now that the Autumn King is like officially her king, since she's officially a princess. So she has to follow a bunch of rules about how to dress, how high her heels can be, how long her nails can be, what color her nails can be painted, how to eat in public, which essentially is basically nothing. You can take like one bite of soup, sort of, and like that's it. Meanwhile, Hunt also not loving it because he now has to wear like a tux and he doesn't really love that. He's never worn as nice of shoes as he's wearing now. He always just wears boots. But he doesn't mind because they're getting ready for the ball and they both look fire. And especially Bryce, he's like, dang, if we didn't have somewhere to be, I would get a piece of that because she's looking amazing. So then we switch over to Rune's perspective. It's the night of the ball. He watches as Bryce walks in with Cormac. They're like arm in arm because he's still technically her fiance. And then Hunt is trailing right behind them. And he watches as their father is like walking up to Bryce and she steers Cormac directly away from him and goes right to the archangels. And from there, they give them their best wishes, etc. And then Celestina is like, we extend our wishes to you too. And so Bryce immediately is just like, thank you, Prince Hunt and I plan to be quite happy. And then there's gasps all around the room and everyone's like, and then she just gets out of Cormac's grasp and pulls Hunt next to her and she's like, yep, we're mates. And then she, and then she's like, I thought you told her father, because the Autumn King has like approached her by now and he is livid, but he's in a public space, so he would not risk making a scene in front of the archangels and everybody else. So he's just like, must have slipped my mind, like, I hope you're not trying to upstage the archangels here. And then Celestina's like trying not to laugh behind her hand. She's like, no, totally fine. And she's like, she congratulates and blesses both Hunt and Bryce. And then everything continues on and the Autumn King so pissed, but Bryce and Hunt are like, yeah, take that. The only way they could get around being the Autumn King's little pawns there. So anyway, then the Asteri call in, they video call into the whatever party ball. And this is literally only like 5 minutes after Bryce and Hunt just exposed to this whole room, be like, we're mates. Yeah, we're together. Cormac is here just as my friend because we've grown close together as friends over the last however long, but Hunt and I are mates. The Asteri call in and then they're like, congratulations in order for multiple things. So they congratulate obviously Celestina and Ephraim, but they're the ones that set them up, so like obviously not that big of a deal. But then they look right at Bryce and Hunt, right into them, and they're like, congratulations to them as well. And so then Bryce is like, holy crap, how on earth did they find out that quick? Were they listening this whole time? Creepy. But because now the Asteri and the Archangels have recognized and like congratulated both her and Hunt on being mates, that means legally she is now Hunt's property and not the Autumn King. So she got out of that. So she only had to like follow the Autumn King's rules and listen to him for like 2 or 3 weeks, all for this moment, so she could get out of it, which she did. And then Rune's like, dang, I'm so glad you're my sister, because that was crazy. Super insane for you to do, but like, you did it. You got out of his clutches. So then, Rune's watching the clock, waiting for midnight. At like 11:50, he escorts Hypaxia, who's still his fiance technically, and his date, and he escorts her to go meet her sister for the first time. Hypaxia has actually never met Lydia, the Hind, ever. And of course, the Hind is standing next to the Hammer, Pollux. So they go up. Hypaxia is doing her best to try to throw a bone to Lydia to be like, can we be sisters? Can we be friends? Civil at least. Like, hello. I'm meeting you for the first time, but she's having none of it. She's just being like really cold, dismissive, Pollux being dismissive. But then at some point Hypaxia dismisses Pollux and he's really miffed about that, but he leaves. And so Rune is like, it's almost midnight, so Rune's like, I'm also gonna just peace out, sorry. And so he walks towards the fountain that they're supposed to go meet, him and Day. But when he gets there, the Harpy's there, and then he's like, Day? Like, please no. And she just looks at him like, what's that supposed to mean? And then it's being all creepy, and he's like, okay, bye, and he goes to leave. But then behind him is the Hind, like, she followed him there, and then he's like, holy crap, I'm about to be ambushed, there's no way they know, like, they couldn't know anything, so he's just like, gotta go, and he runs, and he's like, man, I can't believe I made this stupid idea to, like, meet her, because there's such danger here with the Harpy and the Hind, like, I can't believe that. So he does not meet Day. Then we get Bryce and Hunt. The party has progressed. They are happy and they are in love and they are drunk. And so they're going to go find a closet somewhere. And then they find one, but the door is locked. So then Hunt's like, stand back, watch this, and he just basically muscles it open. And then they get in there and they find it is occupied by none other than Celestina and Hypaxia. Turns out they've been a couple this whole time. And so then they're like shook, like, oh. And then Celestina though is like, her archangel power starting to like, I don't know what you call it, started to appear. So then Hunt's lightning started to appear, like both of them are like, danger, danger, danger. And then Hypaxia and Bryce are like, let's not blow the roof off this entire building. So they're both like, hey, just in case it's not clear, we're not gonna tell about you. Our lips are sealed. This is awesome for you guys. Love that. Hate that you've had to hide, I guess, and that you're both like engaged and or mated to somebody else. Love that whatever this is happening. We're just gonna walk out peacefully now. So they all walk out peacefully and they're like, okay, cool. So then it's fine. Also, Celestina tells Hunt, because at one moment Bryce and Hypaxia kind of walk ahead of them, and so then she tells him, she's like, love is a trap, and she wishes she could be rid of it every day, but she can't. She's stuck in love. Anyway, Hunt's like, I love being in love, like, would not wish it to leave me ever. I'm so in love with Bryce, so wild that you want to get rid of it, but okay, teach their own. And then Darian at this party, he's not having a great time. He had to escort the River Queen's daughter, and he's like, you know what, I've been holding her back for 10 years, I've been leading her on, she clearly wants to go dance, and I don't want to dance with her, so I'm done leading her on. This is me calling it quits. So he asks one of her guards, he's like, hey, will you, basically, you go dance with her. And she's like, oh my gosh, yes, let's go dance. And so then he's like, oh, what a great honor. And then they go dance and have a great time. And Darian's like, whew, glad that I'm done with this. Last 10 years have been a drag. And so then he goes to the bar and then finds some like lion shifter or something, and I don't know, has fun there. Anyway, then we get Rune meets the next day or that night or at some point recently after that. He goes back, meets with Daybright in his little mind bridge thing, and he's like, oh my gosh, Day, I'm so sorry, like, I totally was there, but then there was danger, and I'm so sorry about this danger to you. And she's like, yeah, I saw the danger, like, it's fine, I guess. And he's like, man, the harpy and the hind, like, we were so close to being caught, I'm so sorry. And he's like, I'm so glad you're not the harpy. And she's like, well, so you do have some, like, expectations of how you want me to be. And he's like, no, I'm just glad you're not her. And she's just like, okay, well, fine. And then she's like, I saw you, by the way, like, I did go. And I did see you. And he's like, what? And she's like, Rune. And he's like, oh, yes. Love the name. The sound of my name on your tongue. And then he kisses her. Mind you, this is all mental. Don't know how this works, how they are physically touching each other, how this mental brain stuff works. But him in his night form. Actually, he might have dismissed it when she like is like, I know you're Rune, and he's like, well, don't need this night disguise anymore. Anyway, and then he kisses her in her fire form. Still fire, because she's still like, I'm not gonna let you see who I am. So anyway, the night continues on. Hypaxia is now following up on her half of the deal with Ethan, and so she begins to summon Connor. Unfortunately for them, the person that shows up in her little summoning star thing is not Connor, but the Underking himself. And so then they're like, this is not what we wanted. Get out of here! And he's just like, you know what? No. How about not? I think that we're gonna have some more fun instead. And so then he puts a bunch of wards around, like, the area, wherever they are in the park or something. Bunch of wards. So, and then he sicks a bunch of House of Flame and Shadow Hounds, whatever those things are, on them. And so now they're running for their lives for the rest of the night. So they're not having a great time. And then we move on to later that night when Bryce and Hunt make it home. Once they're finally in bed, Bryce now has a dream with Apollyon, and he is like, hey, I'm gonna need you to, like, get things moving. And she's like, why did you send those Reapers after me? And he's like, I didn't send any Reapers. What are you talking about? She's like, don't lie to me. And he's like, I don't appreciate being called a liar. I just need you to get your act together. And then he also reveals that Adis was, like, in love with Thea. And so then Bryce is like, I'm so confused. What is happening? And Apollyon's like, I don't know and I don't care. I just want you to, like, hurry it up. I told Hunt, I'm telling you. Get your act together. Get your powers. I don't know. Whatever it is. He's like, we want to fight the Asteri. Like, that's the whole reason that I ate that other Asteri. I killed that Asteri was because Adis, they killed Thea, and Adis is in love with Thea, so, you know, I took some control back. I killed one of their own. We're in this fight against them. And Bryce is like, none of this is making sense, okay, but sure. She goes to sleep again, officially. Now we're the next day. She is now continuing to train with her teleportation, and she is using, like, Hunt's magic. He, like, blasts her with magic, and then she sees how many times she can teleport and how accurately, etc. And so in this training room, there's an obstacle course, and then the people with her are currently Cormac, Rune, Hunt, Declan, and Therian, who's just, like, chilling on a bench pretending to be asleep. Cormac is absolutely pissed that she, like, broke their agreement and didn't tell him that she was gonna expose in front of everybody that they were no longer engaged, because then he had a lot of nasty talks with his father to explain why he still needs to be there. So his father thinks he's still trying to woo Bryce back. But anyway, he's livid, and so he's just very angry, and then it leads to this whole thing where she has to eventually be like, by the way, I do know where Emil is. I can't tell you because the Viper Queen didn't tell me, but turns out the Viper Queen's the one that had him the whole time, and she just told me that she placed him somewhere safe and that we'll never find him, so, like, we should all call this off. And then he's not happy about that either. Neither is Therian, but she's also like, oh, by the way, he also has no powers, so, like, definitely you don't need to be finding him. And everyone's like, dang, okay. So she, like, you know, gave him half a truth. And Rune can tell she's lying, but he's not gonna dig into it, and so that all goes down. Then in the middle of their training, Therian gets a call from the Rune Queen, so he's out in the hall. Ethan and Hypaxia run up, and they're looking terrible. They're all, like, dirty and look like they haven't slept, because they haven't slept. So then Therian on the phone is like, you good? And they're like, it's fine, we're fine. And they go into the rest of the group, and then they tell them, they're like, well, Ethan's like, Bryce, you have to help the Underking. He, like, sicked all these hounds and stuff on us, and it was horrible. And he said that if you don't meet him at Erd's temple in, like, an hour, then he's gonna feed the whole pack into the gate to become second light. like immediately. He's gonna fast track them. So of course Bryce is like, well, guess we don't have a choice. So now they're getting ready to go do that. Meanwhile, Therian, the queen was like reminding him that she needed him to keep doing his job, blah blah blah, and so to go keep up appearances, he goes to the meat market pretending to like look for leads about a meal, of which he now knows like for sure that he's not gonna get answers, and so he's trying to think of ways to get out of this eventually, because he's still gonna milk out his freedom as long as he can. And then he overhears people talking about a dragon in the fighting pits of the Viper Queen, and he's like, see, now that's interesting information. I could give this dragon to the River Queen, and then she would be so excited about that that hopefully it would overlook me never giving a meal, and then me also leaving her daughter and coming above and not staying beneath, and like piecing out on that. So let's do this. So he calls up Flynn, since they're now roommates, and he's like, hey bud, I got a task, you want to help me? And so Flynn's like, fine, I'll help you out. So they're wandering the Viper Queen's area in the meat market, looking to see if they can find Ariadne, and then they do. Inside the Viper Queen's like office or building with her office, whatever, she's just chilling there watching TV, and the Viper Queen's like, hey, we came to a deal. She needed freedom, I gave it to her. She's here voluntarily, and so I can't force her to leave or anything. And then she's like, yeah, I don't want to leave, get out, you gave me the most boring job ever, and like, thank you for, I guess, freeing me, but also I will never be caged again. And then Flynn is like really pissed at her, and Therian's like, how am I going to possibly get her to go beneath is the question. So he's trying to think of ideas. He goes to talk with the Viper Queen. The Viper Queen's like, yeah, no, sorry dude, I ain't making her do nothing, and you don't have anything that I want to be able to like convince her or give her over to you, and also you would have a tough time trying to get her beneath because she just guesses that's what he wants. So he's like, dang, I don't know what to do here. And so he's like, fine, can you give me like any intel, any info on like Ophion, anything? And she's like, oh, well, why don't you ask your friends? And he's like, what the heck does that mean? You're not being helpful at all. And she's just like, have fun, bye. And so then they walk out, and he tries calling Rune, nothing. Bryce, nothing. Ethan, nothing. He tries calling Hypaxia, nothing. Hunt, absolutely nothing. Nobody's answering the phone. So he's like, Flynn, we gotta go. Nobody's answering their phones. And so they're like, what on earth is happening? That's not good. Meanwhile, the only ones that the Underking allowed to come see him at Erd's temple was Bryce, Rune, Hunt, and Hypaxia, okay? So everybody else had to stay home and like, I don't know, just pace anxiously for them. So he meets them in the temple. It's empty, deserted. They had a narrow escape with Mordok and Pollux on their way there. They just like had to go down some other streets to go around them because they're nearby patrolling. And then the Underking is like, hey, I did some digging, and turns out those creepers were not from me, like I told you they were not. And they also were not from Apollyon. They came from the Eternal City. So do with that what you will, but that's where those reapers came from. Bryce was like, okay, thanks, but like, why are you giving us this information so freely? That seems sus. And then he basically is just like, well, have fun trying to get out of this one alive. And then turns out he led Pippa and her Lightfall squadron right to the temple, or at least distracted them long enough that they could sneak in and then like start ambushing them. So then they teleport, Bryce teleports to the doors, they shut him. Underking pieces out because he's just like, war is great, like I don't care who's fighting who, what the war is about. War's always great for death, so this is why I don't care about Ophion rebels or anything, because no matter what, people are dying, and that's great for me. Bryce obviously can teleport, but like they also don't have enough time to get fully charged every single time that she's teleporting. Also, she was just practicing teleporting, so she's quite exhausted, but she has enough energy that she's like, okay guys, I'm gonna teleport out. And they're like, bring Hypaxia with you, and she's like, I've never brought anyone with me before. And they're like, well, now's as good as time as any to practice. So she just grabs Hypaxia, bloop, gone. So then she comes back looking quite exhausted, but Hunt's like, Rune, you're for next. And Rune's like, whoa, bud, what do you mean? And then she's like, doesn't argue, she just takes Rune and bloop, gone. And then she also is like going to search for reinforcements or whatever and help them out, because these rebels are about to break through these doors because they're psychopaths and they're trying to shoot their stupid Gorgon bullets in through the cracks that they're making in these doors. And they also don't think that there's any way out of this place because it's just like that door and then like a dark room and like an altar and some throne for Earth herself or whatever. And then Bryce comes back and there's like, her nose is bleeding now and she's like, my brain feels like mush, and she does not have the energy or strength to teleport again. So, but she came back for Hunt. She's like, I ain't leaving you. And Hunt's like, okay, that's great. What did you do for like help though? And she's like, well, I spoke into my phone, did a voice changer, basically was like, hey, there's rebels at Erd's, they're ransacking Erd's temple, somebody should come help. And I broadcasted that over the gates with my voice changer so no one would recognize it was me saying it. And then guess who happens to be the unit that's close enough to help? Mordok and Pollux the Hammer. So then they watch as they like come on the other side of the doors and they start wreaking havoc among all these human rebels. And so they're like, okay, we have a reprieve there, but the problem now is that we can't let them know we're in here at all, because that would bring questions on why Ophion is chasing us and how they found us here and what we're doing at the temple. So like, this is also not great for us. And then who should appear out of the dark next to them but Baxian in his hellhound form, and he's just like, this way. And so they're like, well, okay, we don't have much other choice. So they start following him, and turns out there's a secret door behind the throne altar thing. And so they go down the secret door, shut it, and then he morphs back into his angel self. And they're walking down these like catacombs and these halls and tunnels and stuff, and he's trying to find the right way. And Bryce has a rifle, because obviously they didn't show up. They did not show up unarmed to the temple, so she's got a rifle. So she is recovered enough to have energy. She slings that sucker off and is like, Baxian, I refuse to believe it's just a coincidence. You keep freaking popping up everywhere, so like, what's your deal? Why are you popping up everywhere? She's aiming right at him as he's unarmed. And then he's just like, okay, fine, you got me. And he undoes his button and shows like he has a tattoo right over his heart in very familiar handwriting to Bryce. And what does this tattoo say? It says, through love, all is possible. And guess whose handwriting it's in? Danica's! And so she's like, why in the F do you have Danica's handwriting on your body? And then he drops this bomb. He's like, oh, Danica was my mate. Bryce is like, huh, that's funny, but Danica didn't have a mate. And he's like, well, she did, and it was me. So like, hate to break it to you, she just never told you. And now Bryce is having another existential crisis at yet another big thing she didn't know about Danica. And then he explains the whole story of how he met her 2 years before she died. And then Bryce does the math and is like, holy F, she never went on a date in the whole 2 years. And I literally, the night that she died, I teased her about never going on a date for the last 2 years. And she never said anything about it. And so she's like, I never even scented that she had a mate, but because she's a bloodhound, she probably was able to hide her scent because she knows what to hide. So she's like not having a great time realizing that she literally was mated. And he's like, I mean, would you have believed, like, do you know how horrible it sounds that you found your mate, but then also your mate is part of Sandriel's Triari, the hellhound? Like, it doesn't look great. But also she was, I don't know, she had her secrets for whatever reasons. Doesn't matter. Either way, Bryce not having a great time. So anyway, he explains all this, and then Hunt does the math, and he's like, oh my gosh, that's why, right, that was like right after I left, and that's why you changed right after I left into this whole new person, because you found your mate. Things are making more sense now for Hunt. Anyway, Bryce is still upset, but she now accepts that Baxian is trying to help them. And then also they somehow get onto the conversation about Sophie and stuff, because Bryce is still trying to know everything that obviously he knows. And she's like, did Danica ever say she loved you? And he's like, yeah. And she's like, dang it, rip, Danica only said that to me, I thought, but turns out there's two people, two of us. So then she's like, okay, what about Sophie? Do you know anything about that? He's like, I didn't know a lot, but like, you know, I know that what she was trying to do. And he also explains that the reason she had found him was because of, obviously he's got some interesting lineage, because he's an angel that can turn into a hellhound, and that's not a common power. So she was doing some research to figure out where they all came from, really, before they all ended up here in Midgard, because she was like, we all came somewhere. We came from somewhere, and she was trying to figure it out, and I don't know, a bunch of other stuff. So then he's like, hey, wait a minute. You said that Sophie had like a series of letters and numbers carved into her arm. Was it this? And he recites the whole thing, and then Bryce is like, how in the world do you know what it is? And he's like, because I'm the one that gave that to Danica, and she gave that to Sophie. That's a room in the Asteri's archives, because they have some messed up system of like tracking their rooms and stuff. that's the room. That's what Sophie was trying to get into, to figure out what's behind that room. And so then they end up going to Declan. They're like, Declan, our lovely hacker man, can you please break into the Asteries stuff for us and find out what's in this room? And he's like, you know, this is like treason, right? And they're like, good thing that you're so good. He's like, you're right, I'll try it. And then he's like, okay, so it turns out that their encryption and everything for their system, it's beautiful. Cannot break into it. If he could, it would probably take him like 100 years. So he's like, this is not going to get broken into. However, their cameras, not so good. I can totally see into there. So he looks through the footage, finds the video of like Sophie going into that door and then coming out white as a sheet. And so like they can clearly see the door is those numbers and letters, whatever. So like, okay, whatever it is behind that door, something very crucial, critical is in there. So Bryce is like, ding, 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 idea. We need to know what's behind that door now. I don't know why, but suddenly that's the next logical step, is to go to the Crystal Palace in the Eternal City and literally go sneak into the Asteries house and find out what's in their basement. Like, I don't know. I don't know her logic. Doesn't matter. Either way, they're like, okay, yeah, I guess that is what we need to do. So then Larry and Ethan are talking while everyone's off doing whatever they're doing, and they both of them are like, you know, before we leave, we may die tomorrow, so better get some, whatever you need to get taken care of, better get that taken care of. So then Ethan decides, he's like, you know what, before I leave, I must do my duty and tell the Prime, at least, if Sabine's there, I guess her as well, about this darn alpha that's a mystic. It's like trapped there, caged in the water. And so he goes, and of course Sabine's there with the Prime, and he's looking super old and doing something really slowly, painstakingly, and then Sabine's like watching him. And then she's like, what do you want, Ethan? Because the way he got this meeting and was able to walk even into the den as an exile was because Hypaxia, who's a queen, she went with him and got this meeting for him. And so he's like, hey, I went to the Mystics and found out the Mystics have an alpha wolf in there. And they're like, so what do you want? Well, Sabine's like, so what do you want us to do about that? Like, it doesn't matter. That's not our problem. And he's like, okay, but it's not right. Wolves should not be caged. And she's like, dude, go worry about your own stuff. Like, this is not our concern. And then she leaves. And Ethan's like, well, I mean, I guess I did my due diligence. So he's like, all right, Hypaxia, that was the quickest meeting ever, but let's go. And then the Prime, he like comes out all old and he's like, what did she look like? And then Ethan's like, well, she had like brown hair and like the most basic description ever. And then he's like, was her scent snow and embers or something weirdly specific like that? And then Ethan's like, wait a minute, yes, how did you know that? And then the Prime's like, well, Sabine's not the only Fendir heir. And then after that, he's like lost all his energy, and so they sit him down at his desk and then he falls asleep. And so then Ethan's like, oh my gosh, what if Sabine's gonna go kill this mystic? So he's like, Hypaxia, I need you to go tell them I can't go with them on their crazy mission to the Eternal City. I have work I need to do here. I need to go protect that heir. I don't know what I'm gonna do yet, but I'm gonna go stand outside the stupid astronomer's door and guard so that she can't be killed. Because if it's true that she could be like a threat to Sabine and be like the next Prime, that's some crazy info, because we don't like Sabine, and if we could get a new Prime, that would be crazy. So Hypaxia's like, okay, I guess I'll tell them that. So Ethan no longer going. He does exactly that, stands outside the door. I don't know what he's doing. Just playing pretend bodyguard here, okay? On to the next video.